this afternoon to discuss a new topic for this subject. We thank you for all the blessings that you have received, and we thank you for the good health and for giving us the opportunity to learn and to be able for us to discuss with the teammates for each member of the group. Lord, we pray that you will give us wisdom so that the content of our papers will be meaningful and that it will really contribute to the body of knowledge for scientific research. Lord, we pray that you will always guide us and continue to grant us good health always. This we ask in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. In the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. Amen. Good afternoon, everyone. Praise be Jesus and Mary.
Now and forever.
Okay, so yesterday I had checked the introduction, for what you have written in the introduction, and I would like to commend Group 8 and Group 2. Okay, Group 2 and Group 8 for you got a perfect score of 10 for your progress yesterday. So katong group na wala nakapacheck gahapon kay either nag-change og topic, wala nakasabot sa topic nilang gi-discuss or nakalimot sa ilahang topic na gi-propose the last week or na-approve na topic last week. Please sumanan ninyo siya kay we'll have a new topic this afternoon and basig mag-cascade ang low score ninyo. So katong wala joy na present kahapon, 0 yun akong gihatag na score for the introduction. So kato siya. So we'll proceed with the literature review this afternoon. So I will just be playing a video. So you can really find the link of this one. You can also find the link of this video sa YouTube. Pero I find this, before that, ang kaning mga TLA sa Elect 04, ibalhin ako siya sa CC322. So ayaw mo katingala kung mawala tong or i-delete na nako tong TLA 01 and TLA 02 dito sa Elect 04. So maybe, anytime this week, tanggalan ako siya para mabalhin ako ang grades dito sa CC322. Since sa Elect 04, your grade would be on the katong attendance ninyo sa seminars and workshops. Okay? Okay, sige. Katong mga na problem sa internet connection, sige, okay lang. You can share to them the link of the video na i-play na to karon that is related to the literature review. And then after that, after the video, you may ask questions. The video will be your guide on how you're going to write the literature review. So the sequence of our paper would be from introduction, and the next would be literature review or review of related work. So you can, it depends upon you kung saan ninyo siya pag-design, but or saan ninyo siya pagsulat. Some authors would write it as one whole section lang siya. So review of related works. Okay, so pwede nila i-title review of related works kung more on siya, technological ang inyong gipang site na mga references. So pwede niyo i-title sa section number 2. So section number 1 is introduction, section number 2 is review of related works or review of related literatures kung mga scholarly works na siya. Okay, so for example, mga books, mga published articles, published papers, pwede na siya. Kanang review of related literature yung title. Napoy, others would write it na butangan nila review of related systems. Okay, so specific nila na sila kanisya na section or review of related systems. Pwede po na siya. Okay, so sa section number 2, you can title it as review of related works, or review of related literature, or review of related works. So, pag combination siya, pwede ninyo siya butangan og subsections. Okay, so Section 2, Section 2.1, review of related works, Section 2.2, review of related literature, Section 2.3, review of related systems. Okay, so pwede na siya. Minimum of 10 literatures or references ang kailangan na ako makita sa section number 2. Again, minimum of 10 ang ako ang makita na mga references. Okay, so I will be checking that after the video. Maghatag pa ko og other specifications kung unsa ko ang pangitaon sa review of related works. Now, doing a really intensive RRL reading is not easy, and it will really take time. So I will be checking your RRL in 2 parts. So I will be checking tomorrow. Okay, so first half sa ako ang checking will be tomorrow, and then the second half would be on Monday ang pag-check nako sa RRL. So still per group siya. So again, ang checking na ako will start tomorrow. So you can start writing the RRL today, and then I will start grading and checking the RRL tomorrow and Monday. So kaduha ko mag-grade for the RRL. So I will be looking for specific details. Okay, na dapat makita nako sa katong RRL ninyo or references review ninyo. Okay, so again, ulitin lang nako ha. Pwede siya RRL or review of related literature kung puro siya mga scholarly works ang inyong ibutang. Pwede po siya review of related systems kung specifically mga systems lang ang inyong nakita na references that is related to the topic that you would want to work on. Or review of related works kung kanang mga, for example, mga trabaho ni Microsoft, kanang mga applications ni Microsoft, kanang may nga na, pwede na siya mga review of related works ninyo siya ibutang. So kung kanang tulo ang inyong ibutang sa inyong references citation, pwede ninyo siya i-bisection. So section 2.1, review of related literature, section 2.2, review of related works, section 2.3, review of related systems. And then pwede pod na review of related works lang siya, ang imong ibutang review of related works, tapos 1 paragraph, puro siya review of related literature, tapos another paragraph works, and then another paragraph kay systems. Okay, so I will be playing the video now. If you want to watch it on your device, so this is the link of the video. Ano siya? But I will also be playing it here. Ano siya? Although this is designed for masters and PhD students, no, pero it's still applicable for undergrad na mga works. Okay, so ano lang siya, specify lang niya na for masters and PhD students, but still the pointers na ihatag aning speaker or kaning mag-lecture about literature review kay ano siya, applicable gyapon siya sa undergrad. Okay, so again after sa video, after mag-play ang video, I will be giving some pointers, or not pointers but specifics kung unsa ako ang pangitaon when I check your work tomorrow and sa Monday.
A-grade literature review. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Grad Coach TV, where we demystify the ivory tower world of academia and show you how to work smart and earn the big marks. My name's Derek, and in this video we're going to be looking at how to write an A-grade literature review, and most importantly how to do that in 3 pretty straightforward, simple steps. Now, this video is part of or is based on our free Dissertation 101 ebook, which you can download at the Grad Coach website. I'll put the link to that below this video. So, without any delay, let's get right into it. Now, before we jump into how to write a literature review, it's really important to step back and ask, what is the function, what is the why of a literature review? If we understand the why, then the how becomes a lot simpler, the what becomes a lot simpler. So let's talk about some of the most important functions of the literature review. So step 1, or function number 1 of the literature review, is for you to demonstrate that you have a solid understanding of the literature, the research, the state of research around your research questions. So if your research is going to be on a certain topic, and the starting point for your discussion there is to show that whatever your research question is, whatever the aim of your research is, you need to demonstrate that you know what has already been done. Academic writing is about standing on the shoulders of giants, and so you need to show who were the giants, who were the people that have done this research before, what have they said, what is the state of the argument. So that's really function number 1, and arguably it's the most important function. So let's look at function number 2. Function number 2, or the second why of a literature review, is for you to, from that basis of literature, to show that there is a gap, to show that there is a need for your specific research. So if you're doing master's or you're doing PhD research, regardless of the level that you're at, there's some requirement for originality. Generally, universities don't want you to research something that's been done 1,000,000 times, because what's the purpose of that? So what the literature review serves to do is for you to go and do the work and to figure out, where are the gaps in the literature? Where are the gaps in the research? How can I take a unique angle on something that's probably been done before, hopefully not done to death, but how can I take a unique angle in terms of context, or in terms of a specific country, a specific environment, etc., etc. So the second function of your literature review, and of you just reviewing the literature, the actual act of reviewing it, is for you to establish that clear need for your research. Now, the third function is not necessarily relevant to everyone, but for those of you who are planning to build a theoretical model or conceptual framework, the literature review is the basis of that. So what you would then be doing is taking the various theories, the various that have been undertaken in the past, and building some sort of conceptual model that you would then go on to test and to validate. Perhaps not relevant to everyone, but that is an important function if you are doing any sort of quantitative validation, testing, etc., etc. The fourth important function of the literature review is for you to have a foundation, or to build a foundation of methodology. So what I mean by this is, when you are reviewing all the literature in your space that is relevant to your research question, your research aims, what you're going to find naturally is you're going to get exposure to all the various studies that have been done, and you're going to see what methodologies they use. Did they use qualitative? Did they use quantitative? If they use quantitative, did they have well validated, well tested question sets? Did they publish questionnaires, etc., etc.? So the literature review gives you an opportunity to really dig into what's already been done and to build on that. Very often, if you're doing surveys, you can find, through your literature review, you can find good question sets, you can find a good set of scales that have decent Cronbach alphas and so forth. If this language doesn't make any sense, don't stress. We'll get to it in another video. But the point is, a very important function of the literature review is for you to get some inspiration, to get some insights, and perhaps even some useful practical tools and takeaways to inform your methodology. So those are the 4 important whys of the literature review. And the first 2 are really what you need to keep in mind. In other words, showing that you understand what you're talking about, showing that you're not just coming in and trying to reinvent the wheel, show that you have read the literature that is relevant to your specific problem, and then of course show that the angle you're going to take is actually original, is somehow unique and somehow warranted in terms of going out and doing the research. So let's not harp on about this anymore. Let's jump into the 3 steps of how to write your literature review. Right, so on to step 1 of how to write your literature review. Step 1 is really no surprise. Step 1 is go out and find the relevant research. Probably sounds pretty obvious, but you'll be surprised how some people approach this. So step 1 is get out there and do the digging. Get out and find the research. Now, if you've already done your proposal and that's been accepted, then chances are you've got some sort of foundation of core literature already. But nevertheless, even though your proposal has been accepted, your university and your supervisor will expect that you go on and do more review, deeper review of what's the relevant literature. So in this section, we're going to talk about 4 pretty useful tactics to go out and find the relevant literature. This part of the process can really take a lot of time if you don't have the right approach to going out and hunting. You can waste a lot of time going down dead ends, and really no one wants to do that. This is a big project and you want to get through the literature as quickly as possible. So yeah, I'll talk about 4 techniques, 4 methods to find the literature, find the relevant research that's out there. So let's have a look at that. So method number 1 of finding the literature is what we call Google Scholar scrubbing. And really, there's nothing to this. You probably already are familiar with Google Scholar. If you're not, you can check it out at scholar.google.com. And Google Scholar is just a search engine for academic material, much like Google is a search engine for the rest of the internet. So Google Scholar is really a powerful search engine. It's using Google's technology. And so in terms of finding material that is super relevant to whatever keywords, whatever focal topic you're looking at, you can't beat Google Scholar. So Google Scholar is really great for getting that initial idea of what is the literature that's out there. What also makes Google Scholar really awesome is that they show the citation data. So in other words, how often has any particular journal article been cited? So this gives you a good idea of the authority and the credibility of any given article. So if there are specific requirements from your university in terms of the credibility of the content that you're citing, then you should definitely be paying very good attention to how many times each of these articles has been cited. So step 1 is get into Google Scholar and just search for any possible relevant keyword and have a dig through all of the articles that are there. A good way to figure out what's relevant is to have a look, open the articles that seem relevant in terms of their title, and have a look at the abstract, have a quick read through that. That will give you a decent idea of whether or not this is something that suits you or that fits within your research aims and objectives. So what you will find when you use Google Scholar is that some articles are totally free, easy to access. You click the link and open Sesame. There it is. It's accessible. And a lot of them you'll find are behind some sort of paywall. So you're going to run into that wall quite often. You might get lucky and you might find that everything you need is free and openly accessible, but you're likely going to run into a lot of dead ends in terms of hitting the journals where you have to pay, you have to log in, etc. So don't worry about that. At this point, what you want to do is you just want to take down the titles of all of these articles. If you can download anything for free, go for it, go and download it. But what you're going to do is take down these titles, take them down exactly as you see them, including the author name, dates, etc. And then head on over to method number 2, which is your university database or your university library. So every university will generally give you access to their licensed set of content. And this is usually quite broad. So most often what you'll find is that you're going to find a lot of content on Google Scholar, method number 1, and you're going to bring that to method number 2. You're going to go and copy paste that title exactly as you found it in Google Scholar. You go and copy paste that into your university's search engine, and then most often you'll find it there. You'll be able to access it there. If you can't, you might want to shoot an email over to your institution and just ask them, is there any way that we could get access to this article? What is really important when you use method number 2, in other words, your university's database, is that you copy paste the article title exactly as you see it. Now, the reason I say this is that unlike Google Scholar, the university databases and the university search engines are usually pretty basic, pretty rudimentary in terms of the technology they're using. So if you don't put the title in exactly as they have it in the article, there's a good chance that you're one word out and you're just going to totally miss the results that you need. It's going to look like they don't exist. So make sure that you copy paste exactly what is being shown there. So that's method number 2. Method number 1, Google Scholar, method number 2 go hand in hand very well. So let's take a look at method number 3. Method number 3 is what we call snowballing. Snowballing is really effective once you find a few core articles that are super relevant to your topic. So what snowballing is you download, you find 2 or 3 articles that are hyper relevant to whatever your research questions are, whatever your research aims are, whatever the focus of your research is. You get those 3 articles, you go to the end of those 3 articles, and as always, as in any journal article, there will be a list of references at the end. And this is usually just completely ignored or not even printed out by students, but really this is the gold mine, because this is showing you everything that article that was super relevant to you, it's showing you everything that's built on. So in other words, all the sources for you to go and unpack the foundations of that article. So what you do with those 2 or 3 core articles is you pay very close attention to the articles that they are referencing. You go and find those using Google Scholar or your university's database, and you read through those, you see whether they're relevant. If they are relevant, you do the same thing. You go to their reference list and you dig through those references, and you're going to find a snowball effect here where you're just picking up more and more, and you're going to eventually end up with a wealth of highly relevant articles. Generally, what you'll find is as you snowball further and further, the article references might start getting older and older, because naturally articles are built on articles over time, and so it's just something to be aware of, that you might find that you start running into very old territory. So just be aware of that. Right, the final method for hunting down relevant resources, hunting down relevant articles, is pretty straightforward, and that's to have a look at other people's dissertations that are related to your topic. Now, ideally, you want to be looking at dissertations from your own institution, but realistically, you're probably not going to find too many articles or too many dissertations about your exact topic or your link to your topic within your own institution, unless it's a really big institution. So you're probably going to have to look at other people's dissertations from other countries or from other universities, etc. The good news is it doesn't really matter too much, because at this point all you're looking for is sources. You're not looking for inspiration about how they laid out their dissertation, how they connected various parts. All you're looking for is sources that are relevant to your research topic. So other people's dissertations are a great place to look, because obviously they've been in a similar situation and they've gone and had to do the work that you're currently doing. So there are various databases that you can look at in addition to your own school's database, EBSCO, ProQuest, etc. There's quite a few of them. What I'll do is include some links to the main ones below this video, so you can just check below this video and you can jump through to those. Dissertations generally are easy to access, free to access. Obviously, people are not charging money for them. So that is a great way to quickly look at other people's literature reviews that were in a similar space. A big word of warning through all of this is you are dealing with students' work. So you don't know that that student got a good mark. You don't know that they got a bad mark. All you know is that they passed. So do be careful when you're using this method. Do use common sense and don't rely too heavily on anyone's dissertation. But nevertheless, use it as a starting point for finding relevant articles. So those are the three methods of finding the literature. That is step one. It is the most important. You can't do anything until you have gone and done the digging. So many students avoid the digging. It's hard work, it's painful, it's slow. But as I say, the smart way to approach this is use a combination of the methods that I've spoken about, and don't go and read full articles. Just read the abstract. If the abstract doesn't tell you enough, look at the introduction and the conclusion of any given article, and that should give you a feel for, is it relevant, isn't it relevant? So that's pretty much step one in a nutshell. Find the literature. So let's jump on to step two. Step two of how to write your literature review is that you now need to log, catalog, and synthesize the literature. So three important functions, and they're essential as a next step. Now, I'm presenting these as step one and then step two. It's not necessarily sequential. What you will often do is you will find a whole lot of literature in step one. You'll start logging it, cataloging it, synthesizing it, and then some new thoughts will come up, and you'll potentially go back to step one, start looking for more literature. And so it might be a more iterative approach. In fact, it should be a more iterative approach, but I'm trying to simplify the process here and saying that step two is logging and cataloging and synthesizing the literature. So let's dig into step two. What do we mean by logging, cataloging, and synthesizing the literature? So step one is logging the reference information. Logging is really a simple activity, and all it means is you've gone and dug up a whole lot of articles, some of which are relevant, some which aren't, and you can throw them out. But you've gone and gathered all of these articles, and the most important thing to do right up front now is to go and put that into your reference management software. Now, if you're not using a reference manager like Mendeley or Zotero or something like that, now is the time to learn how to use one, because you're just never going to manage your references any other way for a good dissertation or thesis. So we do have videos on both of those pieces of software. I'll include the links below this video. So step one is go and log all your information. What you'll find with a lot of pieces of software, specifically Mendeley, which you can check out that video on this channel, is there is a good deal of synchronizing and easy importing from the likes of Google Scholar or the likes of your university database. You can pretty easily import those references directly into Mendeley. So you don't need to physically go and type everything out. If you are doing importing, I would recommend you just run over it and check all the data that's been imported. Make sure that it makes sense. Sometimes there can be small errors. Sometimes there can be typos in the reference data, but overall the import tends to work pretty well. So step one, get all that data into your reference manager. Even if stuff doesn't look particularly relevant right now, put it in, because it's just going to save you time later. You don't need to go back and forth. So as you find content, dump it into your reference manager, and then it's there. When it comes time to actually cite it, it's as simple as just entering in the title and clicking drag and drop, and boom, it's in your Word document. So step one, log all your data, or log all your references, all your journal articles into your reference manager. Step two is cataloging your information. So this is, again, really, really important, arguably even more important than step one. You're going to, through this process, you're going to build up a huge wealth of literature. And it's tempting in the beginning to think that you are going to remember what everything was called. You're going to remember that point that guy made over there, that framework, that someone did that was super relevant or maybe not so relevant. It's tempting to think that you're going to remember all this stuff. And in reality, you're not. You're just simply not. As you build out more and more and more and more, it's just going to become a haze of information. And yeah, you'll start remembering certain authors' names and surnames and whatnot. But in reality, there's no way you can navigate this. If you're doing a good literature review, you're probably working with 100, 200, who knows how many different references or sources, and you're just not going to remember them. So what becomes really important is to build a catalog. Now, I recommend building a catalog in Excel. We've got a free template that you can download from the Grad Coach website. I'll include that in the or below this video. And whether you use that or not, you need some sort of database of all of your articles. And what that database needs to be is not particularly sophisticated, but it needs to be something that includes, for every article, it needs to include the authors, the date, the title, obviously, that core information, some sort of summary about what the article is about, some sort of summary about the key points, the key insights in relation to your topic, perhaps some summary of methodological components or suggestions or assets that you could use, and just any other notes about each article. And what you ideally want is for that to be split up over as many columns, in other words, to have as granular data as possible, so that you can go and you can sort and you can filter, so that you can sort, for example, by a certain time period, because your literature review might be in time order. We'll talk about that next. You want to be able to sort by key topics. So I usually recommend putting some keywords in for each article. You want to be able to sort by key variables. For example, if you're doing a quantitative study and you're testing the relevance of certain variables, you want to be able to quickly in Excel just filter out and see, okay, who was it that spoke about this variable having an impact on X or Y. So you want to get down to as much detail as possible there, so that when you come to a point where you have 100, 200, 300 different sources, you can just quickly run through that. And that becomes super, super important when you're finally writing up your literature review, because you don't want to have to go and say, okay, who was it? Who were all of the people that spoke about this? You just want to go into Excel and say, okay, this variable over here, just say we're talking about a specific variable that contributes towards trust, hypothetically. Let's say competence is that variable. Who were all of the articles, or all of the authors that spoke about trust, that spoke about competence being an antecedent of trust, for example. And then Excel would just go, well, these were the five authors, and then you can very quickly go and put together a really chunky piece in your literature review saying, these people spoke about it, and they had a slightly different angle. Yeah, so this is super, super important, and it's something that students tend to rush past because it feels like you're just doing double work, having to build a catalog and put all that detail in there, and then still having to go and write about it. But trust me, literature reviews take time, and over time you're not going to remember who said what. So very importantly, use a catalog, and as I say, if you don't want to build your own one, there's a free one you can download from the Grad Coach website. Whatever you do, build a catalog. Right, let's get on to step 3. So naturally, step 3 is to digest all of this content and to synthesize it in your mind. So far, you've gone and logged all your data into your reference manager. You've gone and cataloged the stuff into Excel. But it's tempting to think, okay, well, we've got it all. It's all there. Now let's just write up. But you've got to take a step back, and you've got to really spend your time synthesizing all of this information in your head, thinking about how does it all fit together. So this is an important step, and it's not one that I can give you too much prescription on. It's not one that I can give you too much advice about, but you've got to spend time in your literature. You've got to spend time thinking about how the research questions that you're asking are being answered by the current theory, by the current literature, the current research. How do all of these pieces fit together? Who's agreeing about what? What are people disagreeing about? How do everything, or how does everything fit together and what narrative am I going to write about this? So it's really important to give some thought to how it all comes together and piece it together in your mind. Start thinking about the arguments that you want to develop in your literature. Spend some time taking a step back, because up until now, everything you've done has been very, very focused on this article, and then this article, and then this article, and then this article. And what happens while you're doing that is that you start thinking, naturally, you start thinking in silos. So you want to take a step back from all of that, and you want to say, okay, how does it all fit together now? If I were to give a speech on all that has been said, how could I combine that into something that's cohesive, and how can I combine that into a narrative? Because that's what you're going to be doing in your literature review chapter. So take a step back, think about what is going on here. And this is not something that you'll do in one session. You're probably going to do it over a good few days, perhaps a few weeks. What I'd recommend is to use some sort of visual aid. Now, everyone's different, but I find that visual aids are super useful here. So what I mean by that is spend some time mind mapping all of these bits and pieces that you've got. You can use mind mapping software like FreeMind or any of the hundreds of apps that are available, or my preference is a nice big whiteboard and a marker, and just freehanding it and basically connecting this idea to that idea to this idea to that idea, and raising new questions, and just putting it all down in a visual format, trying to bring all of this stuff together visually. For me, works well because I can just keep track of everything that's being said, as opposed to trying to keep it in my mind. So whatever works for you, perhaps it's just sitting down and making notes, perhaps it's drawing up mind maps. Whatever you do, don't rush into now writing up, because what you're going to do is you're going to rush in and you're going to write a decent literature review because all the content's fresh in your mind, but you're going to fail to see how the things fit together. And that means synthesizing all of this content. And if you fail to see that, you're really not going to have a strong piece of literature or a strong literature review, because outsiders will be able to step in, take a zoomed out perspective and go, but what about this? Why didn't he talk about this? And the reason you didn't talk about that is because you were so narrowly focused in on these key variables. Yeah, you didn't take a step back and think about how it all fits together. So I know I'm harping on about this, but take the time to step back and digest and synthesize all of the information that's in front of you. So that is step 2 of the literature review process. Log it, catalog it, and then step back and synthesize all of this in your mind into some sort of big picture view. Right, step 2 done. Let's move on to step 3. Right, finally on to step 3, outlining and writing up. Finally, we're going to get writing, right? So it's really important to notice that I said 2 things there. 1, outlining. 2, writing up. Don't write up before you outline. I know it's really tempting at this stage. You've gone through all of these steps before. You've gone through all of the process, and you're just saying, I just want to get writing. I just want to get my thoughts down onto paper. I just want to get something, some sort of tangible product that I can give to my supervisor, give to my committee. I understand. But trust me, first step is outlining. Now, outlining can mean going back to your whiteboard and, again, doing things visually, or it can just be a Word document with a set of bullet points. Whatever your preference is, the most important thing is to figure out how you're going to structure your discussion up front. If you don't spend that time, what you're going to do is you're going to get writing and you're going to say a lot, but it's not necessarily going to be conveying things in an optimized fashion. It's not going to be necessarily conveying things in a way that is easy for a first-time reader to understand. And it is really important that you take the time to communicate well, because you've done all this work, and it's very easy for a student who knows their literature inside out to do a poor job of communicating that on paper, and that's obviously very sad because they've done the work, they've put in the effort, but they just didn't communicate it well on paper. So let me not harp on. The point is, spend some time outlining how you're going to approach your dissertation or how you're going to approach your literature review first. There are, broadly speaking, there's two ways that you can structure a literature review. One is by chronologically, so just structuring it based on how the narrative has developed over time. And that's suitable for some topics, for some research questions, etc. And another way to structure it is thematically. So very often, if you are looking at antecedents, drivers, causes of X, or contributors to X, a nice way to structure it is per antecedent or per group of drivers, so that there's driver number 1, driver number 2, driver number 3, driver number 4, and how all of these things contribute to a certain outcome. So how are you going to structure your literature review is really down to each person. I can't really recommend how you do that in this sort of video. If you're unsure, you're more than welcome to book a free consultation with one of our grad coach guides, and they can probably give you some good advice in that respect. Regardless of what your structure is going to be, make sure that you're outlining everything first. Have a clear outline on paper. Obviously, you're not going to stick to this 100%. You might take a turn once you start writing. That's absolutely fine, but have something that you start with. Have a clear idea of how you're going to develop a narrative before you start writing. Don't fall into the trap of just running off and writing up 5,000 words, 10,000 words with lots of information but not a clear narrative, because the narrative is what wins. Having a clear line of argument that builds A plus B plus C plus D equals whatever outcome, that is the most important thing in terms of communicating what you have. So step 1, outline. Then step 2 is time to write it up. Right, so in terms of writing up, I can't give you really too much advice on this, but I can say that there is a very, very important thing to keep in mind when you're writing up, and that is that on your first write-up, perfection is not the objective. I'm going to say that again because this is so important to just getting things down on paper. Don't try go for perfect. Perfect is the wrong objective at this stage. A really good mantra to work with is done is better than perfect. And what you're trying to do in your first draft of your literature review, and really your first draft of anything in your dissertation or thesis, is to just get the rough content down. You've already got an outline, so whatever you put down is going to be a reasonably decent narrative, but don't get stuck on conveying points in the best possible fashion. Don't get stuck in trying to create this perfectly smooth argument, the smooth narrative on first draft. Rather just get everything down onto paper for version 1. Then what you do once you've done that is you go back. I would suggest once you've dumped everything onto paper, I would suggest take a day or two, step away from it. Just clear your mind, get away from this literature, because your mind will be foggy by this point in time. Then come back and have a read through and do a bit of a rough edit on how you can just improve the flow from one section to another, how you can strengthen certain points, how you can improve the prominence of some certain component that everything hinges on. Tighten it up, basically. Then what I would suggest you do is give your literature review to a friend or a family member or someone who cares enough to actually read it, and ask them to have a read through. Don't give them too much information. Ask them to have a read through and to just give you some feedback. Did they understand it? Did they find it interesting to read? Did it make any sense, really? And a good way of judging whether or not you got your key points across is to ask them to explain the literature review back to you. Now, obviously not in great detail, but to ask them to say, just give you a bit of a summary of what was it all about. And what you'll see when you get that feedback from someone who's completely fresh, someone that hasn't been in the thick of all this literature, in the thick of your research topic, in the thick of a dissertation or thesis, what you'll get is a very clear indication of what points stuck, what points were clear, and what points were not clear. So that's super, super useful feedback. And this is why I say, if you're going to get a friend to look at your content, don't give them all of the information up front. Don't give them a warm-up. Just give them, here's my document. If there's some technical jargon that you need to explain, maybe you want to explain your research questions, that would be a good start, so at least they understand what you're trying to achieve. But don't give them the mini version. Give them your literature review and ask them to have a read of it. Whatever they tell you in response, whatever they give back to you when you ask them to explain it, that's going to give you a very, very good view of what points were strong, which points were clear, which arguments really need some propping up. So I would do that, then obviously do an edit after that. Maybe have a few friends that could give you feedback. Of course, the more the merrier. Once you've got that feedback, once you see what's lacking, do another tightening up of your document at that point, and then it's probably a good idea to send it off to your supervisor and get some feedback from them. You can also, of course, work with one of our research specialists at Grad Coach, and they can give you an in-depth critique before you send it off to your supervisor. That's up to every student. What is beneficial if you work with a professional beforehand is that they will iron out all the pretty straightforward issues, all the basic issues, and what that does is it clears up your supervisor's plate so that they can really focus on key issues as opposed to fairly rudimentary things. So it's up to you how you want to work that, but whatever you do, get that pretty tightened up document over to your supervisor and get the feedback from them before you go and tighten it up any further. That is pretty important. And depending on your university, you might have multiple review sessions with your supervisor. You might only have one. You've got to figure out how best to utilize that resource of supervision and feedback. But do pay a lot of attention to whatever feedback they give you, because very often the supervisor is the first marker. And so you want to be satisfying whatever requests they're putting in. So that is step 3. As I say, really important to outline, then get writing. But when you're writing, remember that done is better than perfect. Don't get stuck in trying to make things 100% the first time around. Just get your thoughts down onto paper and then tighten up, give to a friend, give to someone at Grad Coach, give to your research supervisor, and tighten up through the process. But don't try to write the perfect thing the first time, because you're just going to get stuck. You're just going to get writer's block, and you're never going to finish this thing. So
Okay, so that's it for the literature review. So you can always watch the video again. I've provided the link in the message box. Okay, so so those are some of the pointers that you can actually do while doing literature review. So I'm going to share something that I did before, pero this is not really as thorough. Medyo nakuha, ano lang din ako, na-retrieve lang ako sa isa sa kong mga gibuhat before. Kung ano ko. Pero as Okay, so this is an example of what I did before. It's an RRL tracker. Pero, di na ako ma-retrieve ang complete version ako ang gibuhatan no? Pero isa pa lang ang sulod ani. Nanday diba? Okay, so but when I did a study about specifically because my study is all about machine translation man to, no? So what I did is that I had to look for what were the different approaches that were applied for machine translation. So kana gid ako ang focus ato dati. So whether what language it is, I need to look for what are the state of the art approaches in terms of machine translation. So I had to look for papers. So pag na ako'y makita na paper, so gibutang na ko na siya diari, paper title, and then of course the source, kailangan ako makuha ang source, and then who are the authors, tapos ang ilahang mga affiliation, tapos I need to look for the specific details or problems that the paper is trying to address. So the first thing that I need to look for sa katong paper, every time na ako'y makita na interesting na paper, so the first thing that I'm going to do is read the abstract. Kung ano ba siya, something ba na magamit na ako, okay? So the first thing that I'm going to do is to really read the abstract and then look for the summary of the study, and then check if this is something that is related to my study, then I'm going to read the whole paper. Okay, so unsa akong ginapangita when I'm going to read the paper? First thing that I'm going to do is to search for that section that states or mentions the specific problem that they would want to address. So, example for this one, they cited that despite the advantages of NMT system, okay, so na-mention nila na there is an NMT system or a neural machine translation system, conventional NMT systems are incapable of translating rare words because they have fixed modest size vocabulary, which forces them to use a UNK symbol to represent the large number of out-of-vocabulary words. So meaning, they cited that although NMT is a state-of-the-art approach for machine translation, it is incapable of translating rare words. Okay? So, kana ang ilahang murag gi-highlight na problem, nag-cite for using the NMT. Okay? So, muna siya ang title nila is Addressing the Rare Word Problem in Neural Machine Translation. So, makita na siya sa introduction. So, that is why when I checked your paper yesterday, so I need to look first sa introduction, kailangan ma-highlight sa introduction what is that specific problem or what are those problems that you would want to address. Okay? So, sa introduction na siya makitaan. And then, after nimo nakita ang introduction, okay, so the problem, kailangan ako makita ang approach na ilahang gibuhat. So, approach, ang kani siyang approach diari nga gibutang nako diri is makita na niya sa methodology. Okay, so sa methodology na niya makitaan. Although sa ako ang kani siya kay since review of related lit pa man ko ani na siya gisulat na nako siya diari, pero sa inyong paper murag in an overview dapat ma-mention na sa introduction kung unsa ang inyong gi-apply na approach. Okay, sa introduction pa lang na siya. The specifics as to how did you perform the approach, dito na siya sa methods or methodology. Okay, so sa introduction pa lang, ibutang na ninyo diara sa kuan. Sa ang approach na inyong gibuhat. Okay? Yes, pwede. You can record it. I-record sa nako ha. Okay? So, kato siya. So, again, so the first thing that I'm going to do when I do RRL is first identify or look for in the first is read the abstract, and then if it is something that I think is useful for my study or for my work, then I'm going to read the whole paper. So first, read the introduction and then identify, go to that section or part or paragraph that states kung unsa ang problem na ginatry og solve sa kanisya na paper. Okay, so and then after that, within the introduction, i-introduce nimo na siya in an overview kung unsa ang approach na gigamit. Okay, so makita nimo na siya sa introduction unsa ang approach na gigamit in order for them to solve the problem. But the details of the approach sa methodology na siya na section na makita. Okay, so sa introduction na part, highlight yun na nimo siya ang problem. Tapos, ang problem, tapos ang scope. Okay, so nana siya sa introduction. Okay, so pag mag-RRL mo, mupod na ang inyong pangitaon. So, for example, kanisya, since I'm using my focus problem is on NMT, isa ni siya sa mga literature na ako ang nakuha or study nga ako ang nakuha. Okay, so it's a study that tries to solve the rare word problem in neural machine translation. Okay, so kani siya ang detailed kaayo na pagkuha na ko og RRL or specific na RRL. Tapos once you have gathered all of this, makita naman nimo na siya ang mga gaps. Okay, so for example, basig wala na yata na ako, hindi siya nakuha dire. Okay, so wala na ako siya nabutang diari. Pero I have here another table. I have here another kanang gibuhat na RRL, pero it's a table of comparison naman siya. Okay, para mas ma-identify na ko ang mga gaps sa mga studies nga na conduct na before. Okay, so ingani ang iyang itsura. So para mas dali sa inyo kung magsulat mo og RRL, identify, magbasa-basa mo og mga articles, tapos ang i-identify ninyo is kani sila. First, title of the study, kinsa mga authors, tapos butangan po ninyo direct source para dali na lang ninyo siya ma-retrieve. Okay, dali ninyo siya ma-retrieve if kailangan ninyo siya i-retrieve. Tapos sulat ninyo siya in chronological order para makita ninyo ang pattern of development. So ako ang gibuhat, since nag-focus man ko sa machine translation ato na time, specifically on bilingual. So bilingual siya na machine translation. So nangita ko mga related study that is on machine translation specifically for Filipino. Pero kung wala gani makitaan na or Filipino or Cebuano, since ato na time katong gina-gather na ko ni siya na data, wala pa study na nag-apply og neural machine translation for Filipino and Cebuano. Ang existing na mga study about machine translation that involves solely for Filipino. Halos tanan machine translation study sa una, I think this was 2018 or 2019, for English and Filipino, kasagaran ang mga study. So first, katong 2007, na-study about bidirectional English-Filipino, ang gamit nila na approach is transfer-based, MT. Ang result na ilang nakuha is 74%. It was able to generate a translation module and seed generation module for the transfer rules. So ibig sabihin, nagamit sila mga rules in order to translate from, I think word ni siya. So word-based, rule-based pa kaayo ang ilahang gamit for machine translation. This was 2007. And then by 2008, na po yung nag-propose sa machine translation system for English-Filipino, template-based naman ang ilahang gigamit. So 100% ang accuracy nila, pero I think this is still word translation gihapon siya. Tapos na po nag-propose, transfer-based gihapon, rule-based gihapon. Kasagaran sa mga approach from 2007 up until 2015 or 2013, kani siya kay statistical machine translation naman ni siya. So before 2013, ang nakita na ko na study for machine translation that involves Filipino or Cebuano language. Wala gani Cebuano diri. Wala yung Cebuano diri na ano. Kani sila is mga closely related languages for Philippine languages. So wala pa yung machine translation ato na time for Cebuano. So until 2008, puro rule-based machine translation pa lang ang gamit nila na approach to solve that problem. So and then isa ka column that would identify the gaps of that study. Okay, so kana siya words ma okay, so kanis sila ang isa ka gap ani niya is kailangan nimo na kay list of all words that is available in the dictionary. Okay, so medyo lisod kay ni siya, medyo trabahoso kay ni siya na approach. And then here comes the statistical machine translation. Statistical machine translation ilang approach, ang kailangan lang ani is parallel data. And then we have 2014 pero in a different language ni siya. RBMT naman. And then there is a study also, statistical versus rule-based machine translation system, SMT gihapon, so on and so forth. Okay, so na-identify. I think I gathered this one 2017. Okay? So, ingana mag-identify. And then when you write it sa inyuhang so ganong kailangan ako makita ang mga approach para ma-identify na ko kung sa mga gaps. So for example, ilahang gi-identify na kaya sila mga declaration of blue score lamang good niya siya. So ibig sabihin, if I'm going to use rule-based, if I'm going to use statistical machine translation, kanina lang, for English Filipino na lang. If I'm going to use statistical machine translation for English Filipino, the blue score that I will be able to get is 34. So I will not anymore perform an experiment, or I will not anymore make a research or experiment on using statistical machine translation for English to Filipino, Filipino to English. Kaya na may study na nag-exist for that. So I don't have to reinvent the wheel na. Okay? Kaya if I'm going to say na murag ang kailangan na lang nakukuhaon is unsa ang kulang sa ilaha. Kani nga na gani unsay gap sa ilahang study. Okay, so far sa base ako ang gibutang diri wala na ko nabutang ang gap nila no, pero I think ang gi-focus na ko ani is ang score, which ang kailangan na ma-target na score magud ani is 50 and above. Okay, so although taas na kaya na siyang 34, taas na kaya na siyang 34 for machine translation or kani siya. If tan-awon nimo ang approach na statistical machine translation, ang pinaka disadvantage gid ani is the generation of the phrase table in runtime. So meaning once you load the model, kailangan pud niya i-load tong phrase-based na table for translation. So in terms of kanang speed in translation, medyo dugay kay SMT. So mo na siyang kung tanaw nimo when you try to read kung for example no kani siya na paper is medyo kulang ang discussion sa approach na gigamit, you can read another paper that explains that same approach. Okay, so you can read another paper that explains that same approach. Kasanawon nimo ni mga approach na ilahang gigamit. So far ang pinakatako pag-score is SMT at this time, statistical machine translation system. Okay, so at first my first proposal was to use SMT for Filipino Cebuano Filipino na machine translation. Okay, but then because I was able to identify the parang gap of the SMT, Statistical Machine Translation, which was actually solved by, okay, SMT1 good is mura siya kanang Bayesian good ang paggamit or ang solution niya, ang approach niya is Bayesian siya, meaning mag-create siya atong katong kung sa ML pa nato na class mag-create siya atong likelihood table. Kani pud siya sa SMT mag-create siya og phrase-based table. Okay, so ibig sabihin words that are not found in the phrase-based table, okay, so pag wala dito sa phrase-based table, himuon jud na niya ang unknown word. So pag unknown word siya, dili gyud na niya na ma-translate. Okay, so mo na siya ang murag nahimong gap or problem ni statistical machine translation, which is na-solve daw siya. Okay, so na-solve daw siya based sa literature, which is na-solve daw siya ni neural machine translation, NMT. So that's how you do kanang review of related literature. Kailangan maka-create kag story out from it. Out from the RRL na imuhang nakuha, kanang ma-connect-connect nimo ba, masumpay-sumpay nimo ang mga works na nabuhat based on that on the topic that you're trying to propose. So dili lang siya kay basta nakabasa ka og isa ka study kanang mao na to siya. Ibutang na dayon nimo siya sa references. So you need to be able to connect everything. So nganong gi butang man nimo na siya diara. Okay, so when you write it sa inyong paper na, i-paragraph form ninyo siya. So first is, kuan lang mano, kanang butang lang ninyo, tanan ideas, tanan mabasa ninyo, and then i-connect na dayon ninyo na siya. So, references na tanaw ninyo is, wala siya labot sa inyong kuan. So kung mag-create mo og story out of the references na inyong nakuha, na ay isa ka story na walay labot, murag outlier siya, ay na ninyo siya apila. Okay, so everything or every reference material na inyong ibutang sa inyong RL should be able to contribute to a very good story sa inyong references. Okay? Kay ano siya, murag if we are going to read a paper, ang RRL baya ang murag by default pinaka-boring basahon. So as much as possible, when you write your RRL, create a story from it. So dili tong creative writing na story ha, pero technical writing siya na story. Okay, so it's a technical writing na story. So kani lang inyo i-identify. First is you need to identify the gap or the problem that is being addressed by the paper. Second is identify the gaps. Okay, so unsa ang mga wala nila na solve? Okay, asa ninyo makitaan ng mga wala na solve? Dito na siya sa future works or sa conclusion. Mabasa ninyo na sa conclusion or sa future works kung unsa ang mga wala nila na solve and mga pwede pa i-solve. And then the last is the approach. Okay, kana sila nga tulo mo na siya ako ang pangitaon tomorrow. So mga tana ko sa kanina reference ninyo ang gibutang dinhi, unsa ang problem na ginatry nila ka-address. Second is, unsa ang ilahang approach na gigamit para ma-address na siya na problem. Third is, unsa ang wala pa nila na solve. Okay, so unsa pa ang mga kanang future works. Kay sure ko na dyan na sila yung mga recommendations sa mga wala nila na solve. Mo na siya ang gaps. Okay, so ingana kung mag-literature review ta. Okay, so pwede po makita ninyo ang gap sa scope and limitation nila. So for example, ihatag lang nako ni siya na example. So for example, sa ilahang trabaho, wala sila ni gamit og Cebuano. So this can be a possible opportunity for you to do a research for the Cebuano language. Okay, so kani siya na context. Pero kung sa inyong study, kailangan ma-identify ninyo ang gap. So, asa ninyo pwede makita ang gap? Either dito sa future work, sa conclusion, or sa scope and limitation sa study. Okay? So, question so far? So, tomorrow, ayaw na ninyo siya i-bullet form, diretso na ninyo siya i-paragraph form. And when you write something, kanang ma-connect ninyo siya, dili kay kanang for the sake of naamoy ibutang na references dito. And of course, the first thing that you're going to do, again, balik ko na ako, the first thing that you're going to do is to read the summary and reread the abstract. And then try to see, makita naman niyo na siya sa abstract kung this study is related to what you are trying to work on. Okay? Tapos, pag tanaw ganin ninyo ay di ni makatabang sa kuha, skip na ninyo na siya. Okay, makalas inyong oras na magbasa mo og tibok paper tapos dili dito siya makatabang sa inyo ha. Mailhan ninyo na siya na makatabang isa ka paper sa inyo ha. Pag kuan kanang makaingon mo ay tama din no, pwede din ako siya nganion ngana. So naay mga papers nga, especially kanang mga papers nga nagkabutang og mga diagrams, mga conceptual framework kana siya. Makatabang kayo na siya sa inyo ha. Okay? So, questions? Okay, so yes. Yes, Miss John. Ang pag-check na ko sa inyong RRL, ang pag-check na ko sa inyong RRL kay naka-paragraph na. Pero when you try to gather, kanang kung mag-gather pa lang mo, kailangan din niyo siya i-outline pa or kanang pwede niyo naka-bullets pa mo. Ang i-check na lang nako ba? So ibig sabihin murag finished product na ang ako ang i-check from the katong mga things na inyong nag-gather. Okay, so kana siya. Kung gusto ninyo ipa-check pud ugma ang kanang murag outline ninyo or katong na mind map ninyo, pwede pud gihapon. Okay, para na ako'y idea kung asa padulong ang katong inyong mga kanang inyong gisulat na paragraph. Yes, unsa man. Sa to inyong topic gani. Audio cues. Sige, unsa man. Sige. Adto lang mo sa sa katong kuan. Okay, sige. Sige, tomorrow na lang. I-check na ko balik. Kinsa pa na question? Okay, so if wala na, that would be all for this afternoon. You can start writing your RRL now. So, mas maayo ani is, good strategy would be you assign each member of the team to, or each member of the group to look for kuan. And namoy common nga namoy common document kung asa ninyo pamutang inyong mga nakita na articles para dili mo walay overlapping. Okay? Pero para dire-diretso matapos for example, lima sa kaning team sa member 1, 5 kay member 2, 5 kay member 3. Tapos mag-set mo og time. Okay, so for example, siguro by later tonight 9 p.m. siguro or 8 p.m. depende sa inyo ha. Pwede mo magkanang share lang kung sa inyo mga nakita. Okay? So share niyo sa team and then kung unsa tong mga articles na tan-aw ninyo will be really helpful para sa inyo ha, then kato inyo i-include sa inyo final na pagsulat sa mga paragraph. Okay, so the first thing that you're really going to do is to really brainstorm with the team members. Okay, so kung solo lang ka, pwede na ikaw lang isa ato mag-mind mapping ka or mag-outline. Okay, pero since naman mo there are several members sa isa ka team, so dapat kuan mo kanang pwede mo mag-search mo isa-isa tapos convene mo and then sabot mo, storya mo, share mo. Gyud na siyang pinaka-nice na approach gud kanang mag-share gani mo each of the members of the team will share kung sa ilahang nabasa, kung sa ilahang nasabtan, and then pag mag-approve gani ang every member sa group na okay kani siya helpful kani sa tua, kato ang inyo i-finalize na ibutang dito sa kuan. So at least 10 references ang ako ang pangitaon sa RRL, and then kana siya at least 10 references, and be sure to when you write it kanang ano siya, something that would really connect. So mo tong chronological, mo nang gina-advise na chronological ang inyong pag-outline good or ang pag-mind map ninyo kay usually man good the approach in 2007 dissolve siya sa approach ni 2008. Okay, so kana palang daan na kay story na ma-formulate ana. So unsa tong problem nga nakita or gap nga nakita sa study ni 2007, which is something na possibly nga na-solve ni study ni 2008. And then so isunod-sunod na nimo, like i-connect nimo na siya hantod sa study ni 2000, pero dili ta mo go beyond at least kanang maximum na og 10 years ang katigulangon sa study ang inyohang i-include ha. So 10 years and beyond, ayun na ninyo siya apela na study. So 2010 or 2011, 2010 below na mga studies, pwede na siya dili apilon. Okay, kaya medyo kuha na gyud kay na siya, outdated na kaayo. Okay, so katong mga 2010 and kanang recent papers ang inyohang i-include sa pagbuhat og RRL. Okay? So, kato lang, kung wala na ilaing question, that would be all for this afternoon. You can now start writing your RRL. Okay, so bye everyone. Sa CC322 na nako ibutang ang for sana siya, uploading of the documents. Okay.